geologists were largely clergymen and the noblemen. They're the only ones who were free and had the money to travel and look and didn't have to work.
Where did this evolutionary theory come from? When we get into evidence, that's what I'm trying to get. What would be the...
Well, you have the early geologists, and Lyell was mentioned. Lyell is one, and he was very much set. If you talk about an early person, Lyell came across with the principles of the Great Age, but he held steadfastly to the idea of creation. See? And it is alleged, and I don't know this, it was alleged, even though he worked very closely with Darwin, that it was not until Lyell's later years and nearly at death that he admitted that he could see that there was more that he believed in with Darwin's view than with the Bible. But he came from a religious background. And he and a number of others went into geology to try and prove the Genesis thing. They actually had this in mind, which is not to say they didn't contribute, but it is a bias that would go in. And I'm not at all going to say that there aren't geologists or scientists who want to prove that evolution is right. And they will only report the evidence that supports it. And when they run into problems, such as the young lady who called after we went off the air, and she wanted to know about if all this is working well. How do you explain the anomalous movement of moons in some of the outer planets? We don't explain it. We don't know yet. We do not have a model at present. We probably will. That's the challenge of science, is to continually work at it. And if indeed any of you want to set out to prove some of this wrong, you are going to contribute to a greater understanding of that circle of light. If indeed you keep your personal biases and subjectivity out and work toward simply unraveling a relationship and describing it.
I had a question. I had a couple of them, but this one was very, brought this up, but the whole question of dating, several questions came about. You know, the part of the dating of how we know that the Earth is old or young by dating process. In other words, by actually these different dating, carbon-14 you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And someone here says, and I don't know if this is a true statement, that recent published dates of the Grand Canyon gave basement rocks on the bottom of the Grand Canyon dates almost 1 billion years younger than the rocks at the top, and that they were saying how there is not. What causes you to be confident or not confident in the dating mechanisms of today for dating the Earth? Should we, I mean...
You don't take one data point. If you remember in sampling or in math, statistical data are worthless unless you have a sufficient cohort of people or a number of points. And when you see these scatter plots, and conclusions are only drawn if you have enough data points. And if you've got, say, 1,000 data points, you're going to find some of these puppies are way off. And if you made your conclusion based on that one, you would be lost. But that's one of the reasons why science thrives on public display of working hypotheses as targets to shoot at. That's how we learn. Because like the blind man and the elephant, we only see our one perspective. And we talk about the universe and the Earth, we're talking about so many different fields.
How do you refute the dating? In other words, the fact that they're dating and saying billions of years, that these dating techniques are showing millions and billions of years. How do you and you say an earlier Earth, or is that the right terminology?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Well, Dr. Hiltman stated earlier that he knew the Earth was billions of years old based on radiometric dating. I believe that's an exact quote. And I need to point out to the audience that the great ages for the Earth was established long before any of the radiometric dating methods were invented, before any of the radiocarbon dating, potassium argon, uranium lead, before anybody even thought of those, they had already agreed the Earth was billions of years old.
Who were these people who agreed, by the way?
Look up anybody in the 18th century, any of the old textbooks, whether Charles Lyell. Lyell taught the Earth was many thousands of years old,
Yes, it
based
did.
on the geologic column on the order of the strata.
On sedimentary records.
Sedimentary
Which
records.
are
So,
just about as valid as some of the others, and it has improved. And if you look at the age of the Earth when it was projected, and look at the year in which that projection was made, and you put those on a graph, and you will see the closer you come to 1992, the greater the age of the Earth.
oh, and it'll get older, like you said. It'll go to 4.7 billion.
And it's just like with pi. We're refining the number out further and further.
Well, I would disagree there. I don't think it's refining it. I think they keep adding more time because they come across more problems that they can't solve in a limited time. Lyell said it was 80,000 years old, and the Earth has now grown to 4.7 billion. So it's getting older at the rate of 65 million years per year.
What's wrong with it? Why do you not have confidence in their dating mechanism scientifically? Why?
Well, the dating methods are based on the geologic column. If I brought a fossil to any university and said, I would like you to date this for me, their first question would be, where did you find it? Because they want to establish an approximate range based on the geologic column. Then they will break off samples and they will test it for either uranium or potassium or lead or whatever radiometric element they're looking for, which decay method they're using, depending upon the approximate age. When they went to the moon, they brought back lunar soil. They tested it 8 different ways. Science magazine, 1970, published all the information about that. They obtained 8 different ages, all the way from 2 billion to 18 billion. So they decided that none of them were accurate. They threw them all out and picked a number out of the clear blue sky and said the moon was 4.6 billion to match the age of the Earth.
Why do you think they threw those dates out?
Because it didn't match their prediction, their expectation. But it illustrates the point that the radiometric dating is only used to try to further bolster the geologic column dates. The two are trying to work
Stop you.
synonymous.
Why do you
Okay.
think they threw them out? You sound
I
like
think
you had a
just,
thought there.
well, I have a thought as the fact that the scatter was unacceptably scattered.
They get that scatter every time they date anything.
It means that, no, that's not true.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
All right, let's go to lead uranium.
Okay.
Uranium we know quite a bit about because it unfortunately has some characteristics that can be used for good or for evil, and
Sure.
evil tends to really get in there
All
quickly.
have sin. Here we go again.
Well, that's your bag. I'm not pushing that one. But nonetheless, we have today...
You
and
led me into that one. You
That's
know
right.
that.
I know it. I'm a terrible fisherman. We have today, and you all are part of a great example of what our society is not doing about this earth. We're happy to use the results or the fruits of radioactivity in the East and the West, in a lot of places, not Missouri and Kansas so much, are dependent on nuclear power. Sure. We're producing radioactive wastes that are a tremendous threat and doing nothing about it. Since 1960s, when I first was at KU working on radioactive disposal methods and research over at the Kansas Geological Survey. We were working on it then. Nothing's been done since. But we do know this, that you can't take radioactive material, uranium or thorium, or even some of the artificial ones, and change it. You can't speed it up or slow it down. You can freeze it, you can zap it with a laser, you can swear at it, you can do whatever you wish, and it continues in its way of decaying in a predictable way. And the radioactive dating with uranium and lead is effectively based on the half-life of the uranium and how much lead we have and how much uranium we had, and making the assumption, which is accepted by anyone who has